We got a treat for you today. We're going to walk you through the history of AI with a holistic approach. And I got the experts here that have been doing a lot of the research. So Chris Bosco, many years with Freese and Nichols, principal vice president, senior vice president. He's going to walk us through the history of AI and how he uses it in his day-to-day. We got Alec Probst. He's going to walk us through how you can use AI in your every day. If you got large documents, you're trying to summarize stuff. So he's going to do a live demo to show you how he uses it in his day-to-day activities. And then we have Stephen Johnson. He's going to walk through how we're using it on the sewer side. Again, these are concepts that you can take, not just for engineering, but for administrative, note-taking, beating minutes, going through a lot of data, documents, and so just to kind of help you with your day-to-day activities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris to walk us through this presentation. Thank you all for coming.
Well, thank you guys. I appreciate the opportunity. You know, one of the things is I've been to a lot of conferences, and a lot of AI presentations are done by professors, and it's kind of like very theory. And so what we're hoping to do is, you know, kind of like down to the use cases that we see, you know, in our industry. So this kind of highlights some of the, you know, main topics today. So we wanted to kind of go over some, what I would say, you know, if you're just now getting into AI, what are some key terms to understand? And the point of us doing that is, as we're going through the presentation, we'll be using a lot of these terms, and so to kind of give you that background. And then the recent developments in AI, because one of the things, if you came here feeling like you're behind, you're not at all. Like, really, the power of AI is really hit in 2025. So it has been around for many years, but it's reached a capability to really impact, you know, a city, a business, consultants, really just in the last few months. And so we'll illustrate why that is. And then to understand, this is you'll hear this term natural language. And this is really the thing to understand. Like, we've all lived in a world where you have a software program, there's a specific code that does a specific task. And a natural language model means you talk to it in English and it converts your English into code. That's what it's doing behind the scenes. And so that gives tremendous power, where now we all can be creative in using these tools to do a lot of analytical tasks, as well as, if y'all tested it with like editing text, you know, it's of course very good at that. We want to kind of talk through some of that, and then several real world use cases that we're already doing in Freese and Nichols that we think will really transfer to a city as well. So that's what we want to kind of hit on today. And so to start with key terms, so one of the things about artificial intelligence, you know, the folks that are developing all these models, it often gets this mystical type of language. It's really a predictive model. So they just have created a data set where the model is able to predict. If you ask it a question relevant to, say, legal, it can kind of predict what what the answer would be related to that. And so really, even though there's, you know, the artificial intelligence and all this discussion in the press about a general intelligence that's going to take over the world, it's really probability matching. So it is just, imagine a computer with, and we'll illustrate that to you, a computer that has just been augmented in power to be that much better. So one of the things you'll hear, and you've probably heard it if on the social media sites, is a large language model. And so that is effectively the brain of these. So each of the platforms we'll share, they've trained these models on a bunch of different data, whether it be from a website, research materials from universities, books. So they've trained the AIs on this data. And the reason why we're seeing a change in 25 is, up until this year, it was all pre-trained data. And so even though it was a very smart system, it wasn't interacting with the internet, interacting with current data. So it's like, how powerful can it be if it's like a fixed time? Like the example I always get, the models in 24 were trained through October. So if you would have asked it who the president is, it wouldn't know that, because its data wouldn't have that set. So that's what's changed in 25. And then so closed and open source, one of the things, if you've been following AI, there's somewhat of a war around closed and open source in that it's kind of a philosophy. So the way you would think about it, closed source would be like ChatGPT. And ironically, the company's name is OpenAI because they started down the road as open source and then changed their mind. And there's a lot of legal cases around that. But the idea of open source is you can own it, meaning you could put it on your computer and put it in a walled garden and use that model for a task, say, the city would want to do. And so there are open source models, and one of the things that has really occurred in 25 is they've gotten really good. So you, of course, have ChatGPT and many of the other providers that have the most powerful models, but we're now reaching a point where even the open source, the ones that you can use for free, are also very powerful. And so that's, of course, going to be a decision for the city if y'all want to go down that path of trying to use an open source, or like what we do at Freese and Nichols, we have an enterprise license with OpenAI. So our data is protected, but it is actually ChatGPT. So that's another option that I know a lot of cities are interested in. So one of the things to understand is we're going to talk about 3 different model types. So this is kind of a core understanding when you're, depending on what you want the AI to do, you have to understand like what is the type of AI you're talking to. And so, and I'll say this is a thing that will probably go away. What they're trying to do is have an AI that can transition between these different modes. So generative AI is probably what you've used the most. That is the original ChatGPT. So if you've done the free one and you go on and you say, hey, fix this text I've written, make it sound better, that's generative AI. Or if you've used any of the ones that you want to create an image, you want to type in, create a picture, that's generative AI. So it's taking your text, it's predicting what you want, and it's giving you an output. And so it's a very kind of step through process. And so that's what, when people say AI, they're generally talking about a generative AI. In fact, that's the, ChatGPT is generative pre-trained transformer. That's what that stands for, because originally it's all pre-trained. Now, the reasoning models is really where the power comes in for a lot of what the city would probably have an interest in, certainly what we have an interest in as a consultant. So this is a model that is stepping through it. They sometimes use the word an inference model. So like you ask it a question and it infers that you might be asking a broader question so it can give you a better answer. And so I want to show you kind of a little example is, so the way a reasoning model, it does what's called a chain of thought prompting. Now you don't have to do that. It takes your prompt and it dissects your prompt. So the example would be, I just used a simple one here. If someone went on and said, hey, is a low carb diet healthy? In a generative model, it's just gonna respond with a very surface level answer with no nuance. In this other one, and I know this is a lot of text to read, but the point I'm trying to show here is that with a reasoning model, it starts to think, okay, if you're asking about a low carb diet, maybe you're asking how do you lose weight? Or it's inferring, like, what do you really want? And you'll see as it goes through this chain of thought reasoning, it's actually like, it's looking to see like what else of context can I give to make this a better response? And so, in the industry of AI, they would say, oh, the model's thinking. But what it's really doing behind the scenes, it's matching probabilistically, hey, okay, he's asking about a diet. Who would be interested in a diet? It could be someone that's like a fitness person. It could be someone trying to lose weight. So I'm going to go through all these pathways of answers and give them a more holistic response. So you'll see in the kind of final answer, it's talking about, well, it depends on the type of food. It's not necessarily that low carb by itself is good. So that's kind of, this is a change. The reasoning models really kind of hit the market in November, but they've kind of gotten a lot more powerful here in 25. So later when we start showing you some examples, you'll kind of understand why a reasoning model is very powerful, because particularly if you were, say, doing a research for the city and you ask it a specific question, but it finds a better thing than you asked, it can now say, hey, why don't you consider this? So you now start to get this real power that the AI is bringing. And then this next one, and if you follow any of this on social media, this has become a big buzz, these agentic AIs. And so another way of phrasing it's what they call AI agent. So it would be you set a goal and the AI gets to the end of that goal on any way it feels necessary, right? So we'll show you some of those capabilities with some of the tools, but it would be an AI where you're saying, I want this end result and I don't care how you get there. So that's another kind of real powerful change in these models. And this is kind of an example we put together just to give you, so with a generative AI, which is the top bar there, let's say you wrote a text. So you're writing a report inside the city. The way we did it with generative, you would write the report and you might have a real rough draft, and then you put it in the AI and you say, hey, make this clearer, organize the text better, fix any grammar. And that would be what generative AI did. And at the end, you reread it in case it misinterpreted an acronym or something, and you would fix that. With agentic AI, it has let's say you fed it all your past writings, and you just said, take all that I've written in the past, and this is what I want the output to be, create that. And so you still have to guide it, that first kind of 10% there, and then you still need to review it at the end and tweak some things, but it does the heavy lifting in the middle. And that's kind of the change there, that it's taken a lot of that, it's taking your past work and using that for your future work. So for example, if you had done, let's say you do a lot of reports inside the city and you had a collection of 10 that you wrote, you could say, hey, use this data set to help me write the new one. So that's kind of the power. So this next one I wanted y'all to see, and there's a lot of information on here, but I really hope what you see here is the pace of AI. Because, AI technically came out in 2019 in terms of you could see even the 2018 was a very early release for research. So not to get too technical, but the real change in the innovation is this transformer. So once again, that's the T in ChatGPT. What that is basically it allowed you to speak in natural language, so English or whatever language you speak, and it created an output, whether that be a code output or an image output. And so that technology was originally a research paper that Google did, and that kind of unleashed all this innovation, because y'all might recall AI and machine learning has been around for a while. Even I think it was 1998 when there was the AI chess player and it beat one of the masters. And so, but those were what they called narrow AI, they could only do that task. And what the transformer technology allowed, and it's really a protocol or architecture inside the code that allowed them to expand, where now the AI can work in a bunch of domains. And that's what's released all this advancement. And so you'll see these releases, and you can kind of see there just, visually in 2022 is when the acceleration started happening. So there's a bunch of releases of new models. And one of the things I hope you hear is that we've lived in a world where there's a new version of software and none of us care about the old versions. That's not how models work. Sometimes an older model is actually better for a certain task. So the new model may be trained on new data, but the old models don't go extinct. In fact, if you guys get ChatGPT Enterprise, you'll have access to 6 different models. And you can kind of pick the one. You could pick a reasoning model, or you could pick a generative model. depending on how you would like to use it. So you'll see there the kind of quick advancement, but what I want you to see on this next slide is this is 2025. So in just these 4 months has done all the advancement that the past 4 years have done. So that's how fast these, and there's a number of major companies here. So one of the things, and my text got a little bit, that multimodal is an interesting key because that now allows the AI to do, images or text or video, like all in the same model. And the reason why that's powerful, you could imagine as we go forward with, say, writing a report, like let's say it's a master plan for the city, that one model can help write the report, help do analysis, put images, so you don't have to jump between models to do that. So that's kind of an advancement that is really just happening here in 2025. But you'll see, it's almost like weekly that there's a new release. We've never seen that before. Usually like software releases were in years, and now they're in weeks. And so that it's just kind of an interesting, like how quickly it's advancing. And I think this graph illustrates it as well. So this is a graph of the computing power that's being applied. So this is collective of all the major companies. But you can see there in, starting in 2021, it starts going exponential. So the way you could think about this would be all the investments in these servers, these data centers you keep hearing about. I know they just announced there's going to be a major data center in Abilene. And so this acceleration of this one investment in AI, but just the computing power. And I put a couple of notes there. You'll probably have heard like the NVIDIA stock, how well it had been doing before recent. And, one reason is those are the main chips that are used for AI processing. And I'll use this for example's sake. We're talking about equivalent to 500 million laptops. And they're not using laptops, but I was just trying to give you an image of how much computing power. They're using these NVIDIA chips, which are much more powerful. But I hope what you see there is just the amount of investment and compute power. And this is what's making the difference in the capability of these models. So I want to kind of highlight a summary of what has changed in 2025 that makes these things so much more useful to everyday folks in the work environment. So one, as I mentioned earlier, connecting the models to the internet. So in 24, they weren't connected to the internet. So, like I say, if you wanted it to pull data off, say, government website or something, you're trying to gather data around, let's say COG. COG has data around population projections. The old models had no acknowledgement of that. But now you can have the model go pull the data from COG and then give you trends on that data. That would be a thing in the past, we would physically do. You would go pull that data, put it in a spreadsheet. Now you can ask the models to do all that for you. And it's because they're connected to the internet now. The next deal is that next level of generation. So this is that multimodal deal. Now that the models can do both edit text, edit your writing, also do images. Now we're starting to get a lot of capability in just the generative models that we didn't have before. And if anyone's interested in coding, they've reached a point where, you don't have to know how to code, and you can get to be pretty good at it with just English language, like dictating, like, hey, I would like this app to do this thing, and it will do all the code for you. And that's really occurred here in 2025. So I know that's more of a technical use case, but that power has never been out there for someone that, if you want to create a video game or anything you wanted to code, if you have the right kind of idea and how to explain the idea, you can actually generate that yourself. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the agentic and advanced reasoning really kind of opens up the door for research tasks. And we're going to demonstrate that for you here in a moment. And then this next one is now the model, y'all saw that graph of compute. They've now hit a point where they're very good in niche areas. So that could be engineering. We'll show you an example where it can do traffic engineering type task. And, I put legal here. I mean, obviously all these professions, legally there's there will have to be a sign off, but they're now powerful. There's an AI out there, you could research it, called Harvey, where a law firm has taken ChatGPT and refined it to focus just on law. And so those kind of niches. I share an example. It's kind of a personal thing, but my mother passed away last year from cancer. And one of the frustrating things was over like 6 months, we couldn't get a diagnosis. She had a rare form of cancer and they misdiagnosed it. So after the fact, with these models, I loaded her x-rays and it gave that as a possible option. So what could that be used for? I'm not saying the doctor gets replaced, but had I had that power, we could have asked that question of like, hey, did you consider this rare form of cancer that, in the model actually looked at the x-ray and said, here's 5 possible conditions. The number 4 was the cancer. So like, that's the thing that didn't exist in 24. It exists today. And I want to acknowledge, like on that example, there is a privacy concern here. Like if you're using any of these models, know that they're training on your data. So when I give this example of like loading my mom's x-ray, I redacted all of her name and stuff as just simply the x-ray. So know that anything you put in a model that isn't part of, like if the city does an enterprise license and you're, legally protected and there's an agreement that they're not training on the city's data, that would be the path you would want to take. But if you, as a person, download ChatGPT and you start loading your tax return on there, that is public, because it is, the way that's working, it's not on your computer, it's going to a server, it's getting the answer and returning you an answer, but your data is on that server now. So that's just a point to understanding these models. So there's basically, you could go the enterprise route, or if you did the open source route and you wanted to like put it on your own computer, you could protect your data that way. So that's kind of the pathways. But the models you might use that you just like load up, and some of the ones we'll share with you today, it is public information at that point, or at least they could train on that data. And then expanding the local context. So one of the things that I mentioned how AIs they weren't very good at, because if you think about, most of the data in the world is actually private. Like we see the internet, and like just take Freese and Nichols. 90% of Freese and Nichols data is private. We have very little on our website, and most of it's our clients' data that's private. But so what the AIs are capable now is when you see that little bar where you put your chat in, that bar originally had a capacity, right? So you could only give it so much context about the question. And what the new models are, that context is huge. So where like in 24, you could maybe attach a single PDF, a 30-page document to give it context around a topic. Now you could give it 100 documents. So it now, if you wanted to ask a question that's very specific to a niche area, so like one of the examples I'll show you in a moment is around traffic engineering. I can give it a manual and say, use this manual to respond to my question. And so that's a new thing. It used to, those were very small, as like could only accept so much context. And so that's a real change here. So now we want to go over like some of the use cases. And first I want to kind of hit on these models. So we are kind of like experimenting with all that you see here. And so everyone is kind of familiar with ChatGPT or OpenAI. Claude is a competitor of theirs. And a little history there, the guy that created Claude used to be at OpenAI, and then they had a falling out, so he kind of made a competitor. They're very powerful. The kind of Gemini and Grok. So Grok is the Elon Musk, the X AI. Those two have really caught up the last year. And the reason they've done is they're probably the richest in data, because you could imagine, Grok is able to train on all the X information or Twitter, so that's an immense data set. And then Gemini, which is Google, is able to train on YouTube and all this different. So both of them have really kind of caught up to the pack just in the last year. And then, of course, Copilot is the Windows version. That's another one we use at Freese and Nichols. The nice thing, it's integrated into like Teams and I mentioned how quickly these are changing. Literally over the weekend, they released a new one that makes theirs much better. Historically, Copilot was kind of weak, and we've not personally tested the new one, but they're catching up. Obviously, Microsoft is a very rich data set as well. Now, Meta is interesting. They've elected to go the open source route, so they open source all their models. Though you probably have heard the term Llama. Llama is their model. The term for their model, they give it away. And you might ask, like, why would a company do that? I've kind of researched that. The theory is if you're lagging, so you're getting beat by these other companies, the way to diffuse your competition is to give away your product. And that's also, if y'all heard in the press, these different Chinese models like DeepSeek, they're open source too. So it is a business tactic to catch up to your competition, is to give your product away for free. Now, what that's good for the consumer is that at least keeps the price down for the more enterprise versions, because these open source ones are very powerful. This bottom row here, which we're going to touch on, the way you could think of them as an augmented AI, they are using the other ones. So Notebook LM, Alex going to present on that in a moment, actually is tied to Gemini. So Gemini is the brain, and Notebook AM is kind of like a wrapper to do a useful task. Perplexity is like a search engine. So Perplexity actually uses Grok, Claude, and ChatGPT behind the scenes. In the middle, it's just an interface. But what's powerful about it is if you choose to do Perplexity, you actually get access to all of them. So that's kind of one benefit there. If you don't want to invest in multiple models, you could do Perplexity. Cursor is more of a coding agent. So it also uses ChatGPT and Claude, but it's like imagine you had a coding coach. Like you can just ask it all the questions you want, and it will, coach you through writing code. So that's kind of, so you have a number of these that are just kind of augmenting the power of the brain part. And so one of the things I hope you take away from here, it actually doesn't matter which model you use. They're all so good now. A year, like last summer, you would have been like, oh, ChatGPT is the only thing. But now all these are extremely capable. And I show that because this next slide, you'll get a picture of what the real AI landscape looks like. So this is all the companies that are doing AI. So this was either, if you dig into that, I know it's unreadable, but that's kind of the point, is there are the OpenAI and the Microsoft, but there's all these companies that are doing this kind of augmented, that Perplexity model, where they're like, everyone's like got AI in some form or fashion. And some of the products we'll talk about with like the Sewer AI, they're likely in some case tied to one of these major models as kind of the brains of it. So the next one we're going to go into, and Alex is going to come up and talk about, so this graphic design, one of the cool things, this is literally graphic design, or the image AIs have been around for a while, but they got really good 2 weeks ago with the latest release of ChatGPT. And so Alex is going to show you kind of how he's been using it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to show an example, and this is utilized in ChatGPT. Basically, it's a prompt, just a text prompt, conversational prompt. I wanted a way to visualize impact fee utilization more than just talking about it. So basically, I just put a prompt in, and it started a lot more simple than this. It started off as me saying, hey, can I see a two-dimensional pipe that's underground in the City of Grand Prairie? Let's put a tree in the top left. Let's put an elevated storage tank top right. I want to visualize what existing tenure and build-out flows look like. And so I got a result. It wasn't this. It took a lot of refining, probably like 10 to 15 minutes of refining, but ultimately through talking with it, conversing with it, and then also there's a news article posted with Noreen talking in it, but showing the artwork associated with the Robinson tank that just went up. I took a screenshot of it, uploaded it to chat, which you can probably recognize in that top right corner. That part of that tank probably looks familiar. But what it did is it helps us visualize things to convey a bigger message. Maybe that's to council or different stakeholders, but it's a benefit to us if we can translate these technical concepts to a more visual and digestible way to stakeholders or whoever wants to see them. I'm also not a graphic designer, so if I wanted something quick for a presentation, this saves me a lot of time to be able to get something quick, better than me just going on PowerPoint and drawing shapes and figures. I could probably get a circle in PowerPoint with it broken out by the different utilizations, but I wanted something a little more than that. And as Chris was alluding to, the recent update provides a much more powerful landscape to this image generation. So this is just one use case example of how you can utilize ChatGPT or some of these other image generating AIs to do so. The quality difference is definitely dependent on what you're utilizing, but the recent update with ChatGPT definitely gave us something that's serviceable and I think could be usable in a presentation. So just wanted to give that example.
So this next one is another example, and so you'll see that's my sketch at the top, so you can kind of see my graphic design abilities. But the thing I hope you see here is like you can guide it like I had this idea, because what I'm trying to illustrate with this image is, you know, we always get these questions like, oh, AI is going to replace our jobs. You know, AI is going to augment people. So I use this kind of camera lens, like an aperture example is, and I wanted a deal that kind of shows a pre-AI world and a post-AI world. Like, what does that really mean in terms of people's productivity? And so I had this idea of like, hey, we got this ruler. I want to be looking through a camera, but you can see I'm thinking all two-dimensional. And then I had this deal at the bottom of like, go from beginner to expert. And I wrote that prompt, but you know, the idea of the sketch is to kind of give it composition, right? And you can see it inferred such a better idea than mine, right? A 3D version that's much more easy to follow. And I'll kind of zoom in here as you can see so the idea was to say that, hey, if in the pre-AI world, you came into an industry, I'll use engineering because that's where I'm at, and you were a young engineer out of school, and it kind of took you 2 or 3 years to like be very competent. You know, you had to like get trained, and that's kind of that middle bar. But same with the expert. The expert reaches we'll say they're either capacity on intellect or capacity on time. And then now you come into a post-AI world, and the ramp up from a beginner is fast. Like, you know, you come out, if you understand the language, because that's one thing we'll talk about in a moment. At the end of the day, a better question gets a better answer with AI. A more specific question gets a better answer. And so the world is really expanding in capability. So the expert becomes more of an expert because they can iterate their ideas. If you're like an expert in a technical field and you can work with an AI to like replicate yourself, you know, where that person is still better. Like we'll use the graphic design example. We have several graphic designers at Freese and Nichols. They're going to be way better than Alec and I because they understand art and they have taste and they know color palettes. Like, so they're going to be able to ask the AI at a much deeper level to get a better image. If you go on like social sites, you'll see people that create beautiful photographs, not because of AI, because they understand cameras. Like they literally will say, I want a picture with the focal length, this distance, the settings on the camera, this. And the AIs know that because they're trained on photography. And so that photographer became a better, like if he's like taking his photo and doing what used to be Photoshop, he's going to always produce something better than me because I don't understand that language. And so that's, I hope, what y'all kind of see here in all of our industries it's really an augmenting tool. Like I've had that conversation. My daughters are in college, and unfortunately their professors are like, you can't use AI. But what the students do is they use AI and then they dumb the AI down so it doesn't look like they use AI. What the professors should do is say, use AI, but the bar is up here. You need to be great. Like, if you give me something with you plus AI, it better be great. And that would be, I think, the world we're entering, particularly in education's sake. And so it's really kind of an augmenting tool. Lastly, I'll show you this one. This is very similar to Alec. It's just I was wanting this image. And one of the things, if you haven't, why we're saying that this got really good a few weeks ago is the AIs used to be really bad at text. It'd misspell. And you may be like, why does it misspell? Well, because a image is matching pixels. And the text is contrast to the pixels. So it would mess it up. And they've solved that problem in just the last couple of weeks. But you'll see, I didn't put the full prompt here, but this prompt is getting very specific. And that's what I want y'all to hear is like, one of the things that can be frustrating about AI is you'll create a prompt and then 2 weeks later you run the same prompt and you get a different result. And what that's telling you is you're not specific enough, because the AI is always inferring and that data is always changing. You're going to get something similar, but like here it might, if I didn't tell it that I wanted a spectrum of blue, it might come back green because I didn't tell it that, And then if I really wanted to get the colors perfect, I would tell it the code that the colors are and the way it would be in Photoshop or whatever. And so the way to think about this is the more specific there's kind of this spectrum from the English language to code, and the more specific you move, you're going to get a better result. And certainly with images, because it needs to know that. Like I was having a real problem. You'll see I started wanting a pyramid, but it couldn't really fit it, so it kind of did this trapezoid deal. And so that's a thing that AI did, and then I was like, oh, I like that. So let's put that in the prompt. So the next one is a research tool, and this is where I think is this is a thing if you're trying to just get into AI, this is a very great tool that's really easy and really powerful for a city. So this is it's part of the reasoning model of deep research. So if you look at any of the providers now, and my understanding is even Copilot just added this, but you have the chat bot, and what they all have added is this deep research icon there. And what you're effectively doing, when you click on that icon, you're converting the model to a reasoning model. And you need that for really good research. And so this is a powerful tool, and I want to kind of show y'all. So this is I know that prompt's unreadable. In a minute, we'll dig into it. So this is a deep research on funding. And I know that's an important thing for the city is what are the federal funding opportunities out there? When are they going to come? If I have a bridge project, how do I know when I can apply? And so this is a task that Freese and Nichols used to do. It would take us 30, 40 hours of research that we'll now do in minutes with this prompt. And so we'll see if I kind of have this video running. So I'm pasting in my prompt. And the prompt's actually about 4 pages long. That's given it a list of tasks to do. And in a minute, it's going to process. And I actually cut it short. But when we get to the Q&A, I'm happy to run them live. And so it is, give it a second here. You'll see it's going to start, and this is where I say minutes, it's saying it may take up to 30 minutes, but it's starting to find sources that are about this prompt. And I'll show you in a moment kind of what that looks like. But what we're basically doing in the prompt, we're saying, hey, I want you to go research funding on infrastructure. But if I left anything out that I didn't ask you, I want you to tell me that too. So the whole time you're leading the AI to go here, go to grants.gov, but also tell me about anything else. Or In this specific prompt, one of the things I put is, I know that the Biden administration had this program. What's the Trump administration talking about? And so, and at that point, it's going to research and the power of this is, and you'll see it's already to 40 sources there. The power of this is, if you hired a consultant to do this research, that's fixed in time. Like we did the research in April, and here it is. And then what if something changes in June? Well, you just rerun the prompt and you got a new report. And so the thing to think about, this is why it's so powerful for you guys, is there's a number of use cases here. Like it could be, I have one that we use in Freese and Nichols that is advancements in AI for civil engineers. Well, y'all could do advancements with municipal government related to AI. What are other cities doing around the country? And if it can find a document that's on a website, like a city website, it can pull that document, summarize it for you. And so this is one of the things I had the prompt do is create a table. So you'll see it listed, railroad crossing, that's the thing some of our clients want, bridge over railroad. It gives what projects are eligible, the funding amount, recent awards. It gives a link so I can go directly to that website. I don't have to hunt for it. If you want to get more details or you want to download, actually apply. And you'll see there when they're expected there. Like you'll see, for example, and that's very common, like the bridge program, the BIP that's 4 down, it's later this year in October. And so it's a very powerful tool. And the great thing is the prompt's not fixed. Let's say y'all want a similar, mine's obviously transportation related, but you could run it for water, for any, you just have to adjust the prompt in that way. And so we believe deep research is really powerful. And here's a few other use cases. So the top one is the one I just showed you, but one of the ones we're doing is researching legislative bills. And you can have the AI go in there and so if there's a bill that you think is going to affect the city, you can have it go and research that bill, who put the bill forward, what's the impacts of the bill, is there costs associated with it, and it will bring back that report for you. And you can run it, a month from now and just kind of be getting updates. I had written one that was specific to counties in Texas related to this legislative session. And that's something, the time to read all that and stay up to speed is tremendous, but, running a prompt and reading a 1 or 2 page document kind of gets you that high level. So here's that AI and civil engineering. One of the ones I'm going to mention later is, of course, with infrastructure is what's the trends in the market from concrete prices. It can do all that research for you too. And, that's going to be powerful for us on the consulting side and giving y'all better cost estimates because we'll have that data readily available. In fact, one of the initiatives we're trying to do is just build a whole cost model in AI that, we would be able to share with you guys. So this is a little bit hard to read, but I want y'all to see so TechStock did a strategic plan that they adopted in November, and it's already out of date. And that's why we're kind of going this trend. It is a great plan, by the way. They spent all last year. They went through their different departments, brainstormed use cases. So I think it would be useful for y'all to read, but we're going to show you how you don't need to read it in a minute. Because they have a lot of great construction phase use cases with inspection and that kind of thing. However, all their dialogue was around generative AI. There's no talk about reasoning. There's no talk about research. Because it didn't exist in November. And so this is why, at least when it comes to AI, you need a prompt that does a research report for you versus a fixed report. Because it's kind of, I know they didn't intend that, but a 3-year plan in AI is kind of funny. It needs to be 3 months, It's that's how fast this is going. But you'll see even though it's a little difficult to read, the trend of this prompt is the way a good research prompt works is you you want to get some background knowledge. So let's say one of the readers doesn't know much about AI. So give it a high level, what is this about? Mine actually is about transportation. And then what I wanted to do is go back and tell me what has occurred the last 6 months and what is anticipated in the next 6 months based on like news reports or anything. You know, if a civil engineering provider is like, hey, you know, like Autodesk, hey, we're going to have a release in June. I want to know that now. And then we go into like definition of terms. So this is where the AI is really powerful. You'll see I got about 10 terms there that I want the reader to know. So if someone that's not really into AI is like, I don't even understand what this report is, they can get a definition of terms. But then we're asking AI, give us 5 or 10 additional definitions that are relevant to this topic. So me as the writer, I may not be thinking about all the terms, and it will come back and say, these are others ones that may be relevant. And then you go to, so software, like Bentley is the software we use in transportation. One of the things I'm doing there is I know that Bentley has it. So it's almost my QC of the AI. I'm putting in there saying, it better come back with Bentley's doing something. That's how I can check that it's following. But then same thing, we're saying, tell me any other company that's doing AI. So like this one, I don't work in Autodesk in transportation, but it came back and said, Autodesk is about to release a product. And then you go to platforms. So this would be like any tech company that's trying to do something in civil engineering I want to know about. I want to know about our competition. I want to know about different agencies like TechStock, the federal government. What are reports they're putting out about AI? And so it goes through and it produces, I actually stated I didn't want more than a 5-page report. I just didn't want to read that much. But you can state whatever you want on the brevity of it. So that's kind of an idea that can apply in many, many use cases. So next, going to have Alec. So we're going to do kind of 2 parts because since we're kind of got 2 computers, he's going to give you a high level of this tool. But at the end, we'd love to demo it because it's really powerful to see it work.
So yeah, we just wanted to give you an example of something that could be a use case. So kind of tying back to what we talked about earlier with Notebook LM, you know, it's utilizing Gemini, which is under that Google umbrella. So here's just a use case that we're just kind of messing around with, seeing it could be applicable to maybe you guys. But basically within these Notebook LM interface, what you can do is you can basically upload documents to it. So currently what I have downloaded on here is the Grand Prairie Water Master Plan and the Water Design Criteria Manual. So these are both downloadable from the city's website. Freese and Nichols helped put them together. I want to have access to it for any questions I have. So I don't want to Control F or search through an entire document if I want to know, you know, what's the max velocity through an 8-inch water line, or what's the depth of cover required for a 12-inch water pipe. Or if I'm in the field and I want to know easement requirements, I don't have to look through a document or call somebody and talk about it. So, you know, what's a quicker way I can actually do that? So basically, and I'll show a demo here in a little bit, but if I ask what's the maximum velocity for an 8-inch water line in the City of Grand Prairie, it's going to see both of the sources that I've uploaded. It's not going outside those guardrails, which is a concern with AI is, you know, how do I know what's true, what's false? Like, how can I vet that information? What I like about Notebook LM specifically is that I'm setting the guardrails. So I'm uploading the master plan that's been vetted. I'm uploading the design criteria. This is our standards. These are our documents. And I'm asking questions about it. So I'll ask it in that natural language. It'll kick it out and say, oh, you know, Alec, for a 10-inch water main, you know, we can't exceed 5 feet per second. And so it's going to let me know that. It's also going to tie back a source to where it found it in the design criteria manual. So it'll give me the information, give a link. I can click on it. It can reference back to the actual document itself. But it's a way I can get to a decision-making process faster. So its purpose isn't to replace people's knowledge or experience or judgment. It's just, how can I get there quicker to make a decision faster? I can look through the master plan. I can sift through it. I can probably Control F and find it. But if I can get a direct answer quicker, why not do that? I guess another example would be, you know, the south sector of Grand Prairie is growing fast, obviously. There's a lot of incoming developments, as you all know. If I wanted to know, hey, what are the near-term projects in the next 5 years identified in the master plan? What's that look like? I can just ask that in the prompt, or I can use the voice feature, which I'll demo here at the end, and I can speak to it. And what it's going to kick out is it's going to kick out all the projects identified in the South Sector in the 5-year. It's going to give me a cost associated with it and a project description. So this is all located in the master plan, but it's kind of summarizing that information so I can get an answer in case, oh, my boss is asking me what this is. I can look at the information, get it, make sure it's accurate by clicking on the sources, and then reference back to it. So, it's something I use in-house also with Freese and Nichols, like benefits, for example. I'm not an expert on benefits. The company provides them. I want to know specific information. I don't want to just sort through it. I'll upload some of that stuff. It's data secure. I want to know about insurance. It kind of gives it in a more digestible way that's accurate within the guardrails, but it's also giving me answers quicker to make a decision faster. And that's kind of the purpose of Notebook LM. And this is just one example. I like this one, like I said before, is because it's guardrailed. It's not going outside of what I upload specifically. So that makes me feel more comfortable in making decisions based on it, and I can vet the sources. And I'll do a demo at the end, just kind of showing what that looks like in real time. The next use case example that I did was I basically went to the city's website, downloaded city council documents. So I pulled from January 2021. We're going back a little bit. That's what I found. So I pulled in the meeting minutes, I pulled in the agendas, and I pulled in the action items. So 3 documents for 2 different meetings in January. I dropped them in. The free version, which you can access, that's what I'm using. You can do a maximum of 10 sources. Each file can't be bigger than 200 megabytes, that's a big file. Uploaded it, and so I can ask, hey, in January, what were the major action items or what were the action items related to the meeting on the 5th? Or, hey, what was the agenda? What were the main items associated with? Or if you want a briefing on it for another council member for a presentation, I can ask it can output it, and then if I want to vet the information, it provides the sources. So it's just a way to get information quicker so you can make that judgment and make a decision faster while being comfortable with what's provided. So I'll do a demo at the end just so we don't disrupt the presentation, but just wanted to kind of showcase what Notebook LM can do.
Yeah, and I think you're going to love the demo because one of the things that's super powerful is it will create a podcast of the document, and you can interact with it. So it's a little cheesy, it's 2 AIs like talking about your document, but you can be like, ask these specific questions. It's really cool, but we'll show you here in a moment. So I wanted to show you this. It literally came out last week, but OpenAI has a academy. So you'll see, introduction to ChatGPT. It's all free. Very large spectrum. So there's kind of like, this knowledge graph for RAGs, kind of a very advanced deal. But, there's videos. I've just screenshot the top, but there's a ton of videos there that you can go view. So if y'all choose to go the ChatGPT route, that's going to be a great resource for you. I wanted to hit on this, like one of the things that we developed, I'm actually iterating a little bit, but one of the ideas we wanted to develop a research prompt of this presentation. So the idea is, that, and we feel like this will be valuable for any future presentation, is someone comes to the presentation, there may or may not be terms you don't understand. I know this is me when I go to a conference. I maybe digest 20% of the presentation. But the idea is that I'm going to send David a prompt that is every term that we discussed, deep dives into any of the topics. So if you want to test it on deep research, you can run that prompt and basically regurgitate our presentation and go as deep as you want. And so because it will cite all the references. So if hey, I'm really interested in what a reasoning model is, you could click through. But I feel like that's going to be a really powerful thing going forward with presentations on any topic, that it accompany a research prompt so that the audience can, you have to sit here taking notes, you can go as deep as you want. So I think that's another powerful deal. So I wanted to show you this. One of the new things is these web browser tools. It is an agentic model. Sometimes they use the term computer use. So what it effectively is the AI taking over your browser and running through a set of tasks. And so this one I wanted to show is related to procurement. So this would be something of interest to Freese and Nichols, would be, City of Grand Prairie issues an RFQ, that we have an AI that's monitoring that and tells us immediately when that drops, right? And so let me see if I can get this video to run here. So you'll see it, the AI, that's my prompt. It's pretty expansive prompt, but it's going to go to y'all's website. Now, currently, you don't have an RFQ out for engineering, but it's going to go to your website, and it's going to go to y'all's purchasing, and it's going to start sifting through so it can return to me like, hey, there's an RFQ on Carrier Parkway or whatever. And so this is all agentic, right? Like we have a prompt written. We can swap out any city or like put 10 cities, and it will just like methodically go through and pull the data. Now, what's interesting is you might be asking, like, why can't deep research do that? Like deep research is very good at grabbing a document and summarizing it. It's not so good at clicking through. Like y'all could see y'all's website, your procurement is divided into different types of RFQs. What the browser does, it's really good at, like, I say, hey, I want RFQs related to engineering, but if I say, a road project, it will probably, a deep research would pull all the construction ones. But I'm telling the AI, pull the engineering, don't pull the construction ones, and give me a table that summarizes. I want to know what the procurement is, when it's due, give me a link to it. And it's just a interesting use case. And the, other ideas we had, and those of y'all that kind of work in transportation, there's lots of data around accident data, data that, traffic counts that TechStock has on different roads. So like we want to build an agentic AI to go pull all that data just constantly for us. Because what you can do with these models is you can set them on a timer. So you preload and say, I want you to run every week and pull that data, so that it's a pretty powerful tool. It's a little different than deep research, but it really allows you to, it's literally clicking through as if a human was doing it. So it's actually not fast. I know that I just had a real brief video there, but it's not fast, but it can just run in the background. So it's kind of an interesting deal. Let's see. So I want to show you this, and I know maybe not everyone's into coding, but I'm not a coder either, but I want to show you that this cursor agent, it is really powerful for someone that's like a novice in that space. And so this is an app I was wanting to do. It's, for me, it would be like, I meet with David. He says, hey, an RFQ is going to come out in June. So I would want to like track that. Hey, I need to check, the RFQ is going to come out in June. I want that on an app. And this, what you see here in black is the agent. So I'm going to click on that. So all I'm doing, this is like a simple thing. I'm just going to talk to the AI. So I'm like, hey, change that total client marketing visits to City of Grand Prairie. And you'll see in a moment it's going to recode the app and then update it for me. But you can kind of see the power. That's a very simple example, but I could have said, hey, add an icon here, and I want the functionality of the icon to do this task. And it will just start building that. What you see in white there is actually like the interface with Apple, so it is kind of an Apple thing, but I'm sure it works with the other platforms. So you'll see it's starting to code, and then it's updating the app, and it puts City of Grand Prairie there. But I have zero coding knowledge. I just can ask it what I want, right? And when I started that app, I was like, hey, I want an app that does this. I want, these 4 icons. I want to be able to record, take notes, email the notes. I want to keep a history log. So I'm just talking to this agent saying, add this, and it's constantly updating the app. And then I could be like, well, I don't like the way that looks. And so I wanted y'all to see that. Not everyone is interested in that, but it really shows the power that everyone can do this. You don't have to have any knowledge of code. And the other thing the agent does for you, if you get, one of the things with Apple stuff is you get caught up in all the security stuff. And you can just be like, okay, for example, if you add an app to your phone, you have to like set up certain settings on the phone. So you can ask the agent, like, what do I need to change on my phone to add this app? And so it's a true kind of like coach agent. So it's pretty interesting. Let's see. Let me go. Okay, so this data analysis one, so these are, what I'm about to show you is kind of a combination of generative reasoning and agentic. And I know this is a very engineering related deal, but just, I hope what you see here is just the data processing. One of the things to understand about these tools is the beautiful thing is it's not industry specific. So I'm going to show you an engineering example, but it's only because I asked it to do that. Like if you're an accountant or whatever and you want a different, it can also do that, right? It's not, it's just a data analysis of any kind of data. So this is actually has to be Claude. I find it to be the best for this task, but I wanted it to do a traffic study for me. And so you'll see I have a prompt. Oh, first I'm going to load the raw data. So this is traffic counts. So this is down on 377, kind of in the Crescent area. And then I have this prompt, which this prompt is telling it what I want it to do. And you'll see it's going to start generating analysis. So it's analyzing all the data. Now I've told it, hey, I want to know truck percentages. I want you to look at the major road and minor road. You know, for your information, this was a lot of work for us before. Like we had to put it all in a spreadsheet. We had pre-made spreadsheets, and there is some software, but you had to load that data. And so I just dropped the raw data that came from the traffic counter, and you'll see what it's doing there. It's giving me all the trends that it's observing and the key findings. That's specifically, I'm asking for that in the prompt. And now it's going and it's now trying to perform a warrant study. Now, the funny thing about this is it's going through all the warrants, and it is actually right. Now, David asked a good question earlier, like, you know, at the end of the day, we have to get to a report that we deliver to y'all or deliver to TechStock. So one of the things I have expanded on the prompt is I'm telling it, I want you to give me a graph of the data. I want you to summarize it. But you'll see the power of these tools. And this is like off the shelf. And I want you to understand, like, I don't have technical experience here. I can write. This is why I was showing y'all earlier that it's the domain expertise. I understand the right questions to ask, but I don't know, you know, like, I'm not like coding anything here. I'm just in plain English saying, I want you to analyze this, you know? And you'll see what's interesting in these recommendations is they're quite good. Like this is the agentic part. It started adding like considerations we should think about. Like it said like, hey, this location doesn't have pedestrians, but you should probably plan for it. You know, those kind of things. And that's the agentic part, because I didn't ask it to do that. It just said, hey, I infer that since you're doing a signal, you probably should be doing this too. So I wanted y'all to see that example. One of the limitations I'll share with you is these models are capacity constrained right now. I think this is meaning you can't run a model for 10 minutes. They'll time out. And part of that is the servers that, you know, if everyone's like pinging these servers, the platforms, the data centers can only handle so much. I think that's a temporary problem, but the workflow here on my side is I actually run 4 different, in this case, I ran 4 different prompts. I ran a data analysis prompt, then a warrant study prompt, so 3, then a report prompt. So I did the data analysis, I took that result, put it into, said run the warrant study, it ran that for a few minutes. Then I took both of those data sets and I said, now write the report. So the only thing I did in the warrant study was add an aerial image of the location. It did all the appendix. Now that is like a 12-page prompt, but you know, you write the prompt once. So it's kind of, but you can kind of see the power of these tools. So I mentioned this earlier, like one of the ones we really want to get in Freese and Nichols because we think it will be amazing for you guys is using the same logic for cost modeling. So the idea would be you have a deep research component that pulls all the construction price trends, and then you have the AI analyze all your recent bid tabs. And so it averages it out and then you would effectively, when you have a new project, or let's say y'all are planning your CIP, you say, take the bid data, and maybe it's like 6 months of data. I want you to give me an average price, and then we're going to bid this a year from now, so I want you to use the construction price index to interpolate out what the price will be then. And I just like you saw with the traffic engineering, this capability, we're like working on this now. I don't have it fully baked, but I feel like that's going to be a real powerful tool for you guys, certainly for us to give y'all better estimates. And it, really kind of cross-discipline. It could work in, water or transportation. And then I kind of mentioned some other ones, going further with the intersection analysis around like roundabouts and different things like that. I feel like we do a lot of environmental with TechSoc projects. So much of that is a research task of like, endangered species. I feel like that's going to be able to be accelerated. And then I do a lot in the program management side, and there's very expensive softwares around that I feel like components of that software we're going to be able to automate and own, right? Like that's one of the key things here is, you have this capability, like take the warrant study. I mean, Freese and Nichols was paying for software that did the analysis part of a warrant study. We still had to write the report, but we own, that prompt end to end. And so that's very powerful, and you can edit it. We've never been able to edit the code of a platform software. We can edit our prompt and make it better and better. Alec take my prompt and he says, oh, it's pretty good, but I can make it better. And that's another thing is we kind of see that these prompts they're living, right? Because sometimes the AI will give you a great result. So like that one on the traffic, it gave me a great recommendation at the end. Then I'm like, okay, let's roll that into the future prompt. Now I want that to be baked in, and you just like constantly making them better. So here is the data side. I didn't know, or Steven's doing this one. Okay.
All right. Excuse me. Thank you, Chris. So this is a couple examples of how we are using AI for reviewing wastewater inspection videos. So a lot of our projects right now are doing a inspection of the inside of a sewer line. It's really exciting videos to watch. All of my EITs love it. We get to sit there and watch hours and hours and hours of the inside of a sewer pipe. It's great. That's what we use these platforms for now. But we've got a couple examples, Sewer AI, Vapor, and Clear Object. Those are a couple of vendors that we've been working with. There are others out there as well. But what we can do is give them the videos. They've been spending years training their software on image recognition. So they'll take snapshots of different types of defects of pipes. And so they'll take a pipe with a break in it, or a hole, or roots coming through your pipe. They've reviewed hundreds and thousands, if not millions, of images and all these different videos to check for those kinds of things. And they've got these models trained to identify them as the video's going and video's playing with the inspection footage. So now I can upload this to them, let them go through the review process while my engineers work on the other downstream work, the actual important work of evaluating the data and doing recommendations off of that video. So they'll go through it all. I know Chris brought up earlier having a person in the loop. We still have people involved. As part of the industry requirements for doing this type of work, using AI to evaluate CCTV video, a person has to sign off that they reviewed it. It's an industry requirement. So the vendors, say I'll pick on Sewer AI, they'll go through, they'll have their video review, the AI goes through and codes everything, says, these are all the defects that we identified. These are things that we're kind of questionable about. Our model's not quite confident that this is actual defect that it observed. And then they've got a person that has to sign off, yeah, we agree with all of these, and these are ones that we would change it to this code instead of that code. So that's a requirement for the videos before it ends up in our lab, and we get to go through and do actual data processing with it, take those videos, it'll tell us, hey, these are where the defects are, these are what we want to focus on. You have clean pipe, I don't need to worry about. These are all the ones with your holes, go do something with those pipes. So these are some examples of how we get to use some of these vendors with inspection video.
So on a similar note, now this Bentley is the software we use for road design. So you could think of it like if you're AutoCAD, it's very similar. But they've come out with now it is related to site development. We're part of the group that's kind of beta testing So it's not fully on market, but the idea you can kind of see there in the picture. There's, oh, I went too far. It's similar to what you saw with that coding agent. Like you will just talk in natural language to create plans. So like, in this context, if I didn't do a video of this one, but they'll say, hey, I want 90 parking spots at 90 degrees, and it starts building it. And he's like, hey, let's go to 60-degree angle parking, and starts building it. And so, as a designer, this is something that, will really be on the market in the next year or so. It's really going to accelerate plan production because you can iterate fast. I mean, heck, we could be able to sit in a room with y'all and iterate the design. They're also claiming, now we've not been able to test it yet, that it produces the plans. That seems like a big leap, but we would really encourage that. I mean, that would really speed up the delivery of products to you guys. But anyway, similar to the sewer AI. So just have a couple more slides here. One of the things I know this is a lot of stuff we're giving y'all today, and I really wanted to end that, like, was very different. We've all grown up in this world of like, there's a new software and, hey, I need all this training and there's a lot here. What we're showing you today, like we've learned in the last couple of months. I mean, we've been into AI for the last couple of years, but as I mentioned, all these gains have just come very recently, and so, one of the things I hope you heard today is like specific domain knowledge is always going to augment the power of these. If you're an expert in a particular field, like you have the ability, like I think and we're even seeing that some in our firm of like the thinking is, oh, I need a college expert. I need to, bring in someone outside that knows nothing about our industry, or I need a computer science person. Obviously, those people are very important for the end implementation. However, the use cases is the practitioner. It's like the traffic engineer, the accountant, the use cases are going to be born out of the people that understand the power of it. And so that context is king. It's like this, the better, more specific question you can get on a particular thing. That's kind of why I think the Notebook LM is very interesting, that you can upload your own document and talk to it about that versus asking those questions through the internet, And then what I just kind of mentioned, I keep trying to promote this, that the teacher and the tool are the same thing, because, we're showing you these, but what we didn't show you is if you get hung up, you just say, how do I do this? Or, you just iterate your questions like, why isn't this working? Like on the coding one, I'll get an error. I cut and paste the error. Tell me how to resolve this, and you just iterate. And that's the power of these. We lived in a world where you're like, in our Bentley case, you have to call up Bentley. Hey, it's not working. With an AI, the tool and the teacher are the same thing. So you can just constantly iterate. And then, as I mentioned earlier, like understanding the model you're using and what your end goal. If you went to an agentic model and gave it a research prompt, it's just going to reformat the research or the prompt. It doesn't know to do all that reasoning steps, So that's why they put the icon there, because people were misunderstanding. They were trying to say, hey, do deep research, and it would just edit it. So these different models have different capability. That one I showed you that's a web browser, it's specific to that job. So you can't really go to ChatGPT and just say, do a web browser. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I think that's all going to converge in the near future. But right now, they're kind of like different models. So a couple more, the local data, I think is tremendous, like we talked about, to just get more relevance to your deal. And reverse prompting, and I'm not sure that's an industry term, but one of the things I've ran into is Alec mentioned that, like you want to do a graphic design. He had a prompt and it maybe didn't come out the way he wanted. And so he starts talking to the AI, hey, change this, change this, change this. At the end, a really good practice is to say, okay, now that I got the final product, create me a prompt that will give me that in the future. And then now you got a better prompt for the next time, right? So that's what I'm calling reverse prompting, is like when you get to the product you want, make sure you codify that because if you wait 2 weeks and go back with your original, you're starting all over again, So that's a way to think about it. And then I would just say, like, experiment. Almost all these, like the traffic study one, it was kind of a random story, but a citizen was saying, hey, I think y'all need a traffic signal here. And I didn't have time to do all the analysis. So I was like, I wonder if the AI can do it. And it gave me an answer, but it wasn't it was a right answer, but not fully documented. And so that's really what the prompt is doing, is fully documenting, putting in the QCs, that kind of thing. That part takes work, but just like trying different things, is really, and just know it does take a lot of iterations. Like I have some prompts I've probably iterated 50 times, but now they're good, right? And so that's kind of the power of it. So final takeaways, I'll say if you're new to AI, the deep research and the education tool is like a great entry. You'll get a lot of value really quick. And then, as we mentioned earlier, just understand that any private data, you definitely don't want to be loading that into an AI unless y'all get an enterprise license. And then, one of the things I believe, and of course you guys will be the experts on this, is that y'all probably have data sources that maybe weren't tapped in because it would be hard otherwise. I imagine with y'all's signal system, there's probably immense data that those systems have that maybe now will give y'all value. And that's something we're trying to learn from all our clients. Like, what is a data set that was impractical? Like one of the ones I mentioned about having an AI track accident data, I actually wanted to track all the accidents on my past projects, because I want to know, like, what if I did an intersection 5 years ago and it's having accidents? I hope that's not the case, but like this after action type of approach never existed before because it'd be expensive. But now you have this ability to like monitor things with these systems. And then prompt management has been a big thing for us because, you'll end up with like 30 Word documents. And so that's the thing, y'all may, I know we're looking at, like a database thing in Freese and Nichols to manage that, share them. So that's kind of a thing that will be important. And then, one of the things we're trying to do, like I showed you with the tech stock plan, but just kind of, what is the highest value, like use cases we can help develop for our clients and help plan kind of how these can be integrated both in our firm as well as our clients. So I know it's a lot of slides, but let's have Alec, because it's really cool to see how this works. Let's have him plug that in real quick.
All right. Okay, so this is the same notebook LM that we had before, and I guess is it through? Do you know if it's through?
I think what I would do is just kind of push the mic down there, and we'll see.
Okay.
Let's see it go.
Gotcha. All right, we'll give it a shot. So basically, as I mentioned before, same concept. We have the water master plan uploaded, water design criteria uploaded. You can ask questions in chat, but there's also a feature as part of this where it basically summarizes all the documents have in there. So from this, it kicked out a 17-minute podcast basically on the water master plan. So if you're interested in that or learning about it, you can listen to it via audio. But you can also interject, and this is a beta feature that they have in the free version of, it's a corny podcast between two AI bots, but you can click into it and ask questions, and similar to how it does in the chat, the idea is it's going to answer for you or give you answers on the fly. There might be value in this in terms of like maybe being in the field, you want an answer, you don't want to have to type something, look into it. You can download Notebook LM on your phone, ask it questions, get answers. So let's see if it'll let us join here. And if not, we'll just...
You're on the internet?
Yeah, I'm on the internet. So we will see here. But while that's loading, I guess I'll show an example here in the chat. But so kind of how I said before, like if I wanted to say, and I have it preloaded, but what projects are projected or are planned in the short term within the south sector of Grand Prairie. So if I wanted to know that, you look on the left, you can see my sources. I have the water master plan checked, and I have the water design criteria plan checked. I unchecked the comprehensive plan, which is on the website, and also the downtown master plan, which is on the website, just because I feel like they weren't very applicable to my question. So you can see from this, I'm getting an answer. So it's basically pulling from the reports, and being that I've been very involved with this report specifically, I can vet the answers. But so it's pulling all the projects associated with just the short term. So it shows project 1S, it shows the cost associated, project 2S, 3S, basically all the projects that are just in the south sector in the short term in the 5-year window. So up top, it's giving me a cost summary where that is. If I'm like, well, where is it pulling from? I mean, it's telling me this, but what's actually the source here? So might take a second to load. Internet might be barring capabilities right now, but
Let's try. We'll just keep yours up, but the audio's working on this one, so
Is it okay?
we can play the audio game here.
Here we're going underground, kind of literally, as we explore a crucial but often overlooked aspect of city life, wastewater management.
Not the most glamorous topic, I'll admit, but absolutely essential.
You got that right. We often just flush and forget, right?
Hey there.
yeah, it's time
Want
to
to share your
interact.
thoughts on this?
So if I was going to do a 10-inch water main in the city of Grand Prairie, what's the maximum allowable velocity I would have in that pipe?
Oh, that's a great question. You're thinking about the water side of things.
Yes, that falls under their water design criteria. Let's take a look.
According to the manual, for pipes smaller than 16 inches, the maximum allowable velocity is 7 feet per second.
So for your 10-inch water main in Grand Prairie, that would be the limit.
Good catch bringing that up. It's all part of infrastructure, right?
Absolutely. And it highlights the different considerations for water. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Appreciate it. So what kind of developments are coming in the south sector based on our latest master plan?
That's a really insightful question. The south sector is definitely a key focus for future growth in Grand Prairie's wastewater system.
Okay, let's unpack this. Based on the documents, the South Sector is projected to experience major residential and commercial growth over the next 25 years.
What's fascinating here is that they've developed their capital improvement plan specifically to serve this anticipated growth.
Right. They looked at existing and future land use plans, along with specific development plans for areas like Lake Song and Prairie Ridge.
And using the flow data and predicted growth, they've sized and phased their improvements to accommodate that increase in wastewater production.
So you'll see quite a few development-driven projects slated.
So obviously a little cheesy, but the idea is I can get information. If I don't want to look at my phone, I get answers. They fluff it up a little bit, but once again, it's pulling from the data I provided. It's not just going outside the wheelhouse. I mean, you heard very specific developments associated with what's coming in. I can get past the corniness if it gets me an answer quicker, and I don't want to type it in. So yeah, and that's on the free version. I don't have a plus subscription. I think if you get the plus subscription, which is like $10 a month, I think you can add more sources. Right now, I'm limited to 10 with size restrictions. But I mean, this could be for anyone's job outside of engineering. It could be anything where you can upload a document that's very technical or something you want to upload and have questions on. I personally prefer it just because I don't always want to sort through a giant document to get an answer that I should be able to find pretty quickly. So yeah, just wanted a demo and just kind of showcase that. But if you guys have any questions, just let us know, and yeah, just keep us up here.
And I mentioned earlier, like when I was showing y'all that tech stock strategic plan, so that's like a 70-page document that probably no one would read, but we're using this tool, and you can ask, what does tech stock think's important with AI, and does a mind map, breaks it down in different sectors of tech stock. So it's very powerful for, doesn't have to just be Grand Prairie use cases. You can really, get that from many. So any specific questions? Yes, sir.
From the transportation standpoint, that yes, there are accidents at your intersections that you design, trust me. You have to be but in relation to using AI for like real-time conditions, how far in the future, next week, next month, next year, will it be where we'll be able to use an AI system in real time to make adjustments for signals versus
So kind of two parts to that question. So in terms of like the capability to do it, I think that's within 6 months, because you'll hear this term that is kind of moving around a lot in the AI space. It's MCP, it's Model Context Protocol. So one of the challenges with AI systems is they're not great at APIs. So like, generally if you guys had a data set and you wanted to give access to it. I mean, I use the example, it's more easy to use like a weather example, like a weather API where, your app's tapping into that data source. The way that Model Context Protocol works is it basically is a similar type of process to an API, but you could have, like the city could have a server that has like all your traffic data, and then that server basically can speak to the AI, right? Or the AI can pull that data. So that is Anthropic, which is the Claude provider. They have developed the MCP protocol, and all the other companies have adopted it, because the goal is that, you could imagine a world where each one had their own special, and that would be very convoluted. So the idea of MCP is that it's like an adapter that works with any large language model. So the city could put the effort in to create that on their server, that data set, and then if y'all wanted to use Claude or you wanted ChatGPT, or maybe y'all change between them, then it would speak to it. So that ability to analyze and give y'all answers, I think, is real soon. I wasn't sure if the second part of your question was like real time. I imagine that would come from, a software provider that y'all currently work with. Like I gave the Bentley example, I'm sure that, a lot of the software providers in that space are probably developing their own AI interface. That's a part I don't have an answer on, but.
Yeah, like we have CCTV at several intersections.
Uh-huh.
That would be a live source that the model could be bringing in, and say there's an accident at the intersection, it could change the signal timing, it could reroute traffic with digital message, or say accident at such and such intersection, choose the alternate route.
Yeah, I think the power, that's kind of the thing that we've been talking about inside Freese and Nichols. What's interesting is, all this kind of analysis and production work is getting very, very fast and automated. But the thinking would be that, maybe where our industry is going is there's a lot more data collection. So, at the more archaic of counting cars, one of the things we've been talking about is, hey, let's count more, let's do more data collection with traffic counting, more than we ever did, because we know the analysis part's going to be real quick. And then I think the QC actually gets bigger, because, it's going to happen so fast. I think you're going to have to spend more time. Maybe it's vetting a appropriate prompt that builds in the QC. Like one of the things, like in that traffic example, I mentioned how I got it to produce a report, but kind of like the next step I'm trying to do is, based on just kind of rule of thumbs in the industry, have it check itself and like actually provide reference documents and these checks that we would normally do, so I can, help for quicker QC.
Another thing I wrote down on one of your slides, that it requires clear, relevant context is crucial for optimum results. What's optimum? Is optimum correct or 8% correct?
Yeah, so it's funny, like y'all heard the term like an AI hallucinating. And that's another one of those terms that feels very mystical. Like it's really, in the early days of AI, it was lack of training data. And like if it didn't have context, like I always use the example of level of service, right? Like in traffic engineering, that means a certain thing, but it means something else for like a hotel manager. And in the early days, you would say, hey, if I was very non-specific and I said, describe a level of service to me, it might just start describing, hospitality. and have nothing to do with traffic engineering. And so, but to your question is, I actually think we do to some degree want the AIs to do reasoning, because I know in my own experience, like I found that it suggests things I wasn't thinking about. But when I was talking about a specific question is like, let's take the traffic engineering one. A fresh out of school student can go on AI and they can say, I want you to pretend you're a traffic engineer with 20 years experience. Here's data, do study. And they'll get an answer, and it might even be right. But the difference is that the seasoned traffic engineer is, going to be able to ask very specific nuanced questions, and that really needs to be in that prompt to get from 70% good to like 99. Now the other thing about it is the AI is very literal. Like, so one example is, in warrant studies, you take like the highest traffic on the minor road compared to the major. It was like hopping like the minor at this hour and then the minor at this hour. But that was actually right, because my prompt was general and it said, take the highest of the minor road. I didn't specify one direction highest, And so that was like back to the QC thing. So now when you look at my prompt, I actually have the AI state the direction it chose. So I can see southbound, southbound, south. Okay, we're all good. So I guess what I'm trying to answer your question around is, are we ever going to get 100% accurate? Probably not, because you kind of want that inference part of the AI. I don't know if Alec is experiencing the same thing, but on the visual side, it almost comes up with something better than I thought every time. And if I had such a specific ask that I just got the same thing, it would kind of eliminate like an expansion of like the idea. And so that, that's kind of one of the powers of it. Same with the research, like I want it to go find something I was not even knowledgeable about. Almost every time I run that AI research, I'll find out some company that I never even heard of that is doing something really cool. And so, I really want that in those systems. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So I have one, potentially two, depending on how you answer the first one.
Yeah.
But my question is, this is still relatively new technology, I think we could say, and the data sets that the answers we're getting from these programs are, I wouldn't say purely, but are largely based off of, I'll call them man-made data.
Yeah.
It's pre-AI data, in essence. So my question to you is, as this technology evolves and that data set grows and our, I won't say dependency, but our use of AI continues to increase, do you think that data set is going to transition more from man-made data into more AI-generated data as time goes on?
So I'll answer that in two ways. So like, I do know that the AI platforms are, using the AI to train itself. So to your point, that it is starting to be like this perpetual cycle of the AI choosing the best data to train itself. At the local level, I guess I feel like, and I keep coming back to the traffic one, but like there's so much data that is always going to be very locally relevant. Like in the, like one of the parts you didn't see in the traffic deals, it's actually referencing our current manual. And one of the insights, we've had at Freese is a lot of our manuals are written for humans, and the AIs are really bad at reading graphs. They read tabular data and text very well. And so I don't think it's fully answering your question, but I'll pivot back to that. But it's like there's a lot of these data sources that we've always used, like different graphs, nomographs that explain a topic, that we kind of need to convert to a readable format for the AI to perform better. So that's kind of one element. And then yeah, the data around, it kind of depends on your data source, but so much is such like a live data around whether it's the traffic signal system or, in our context, survey data is very specific to that time. But did I fully answer that?
I guess my ultimate concern is, let's say the dependency on AI generated data does grow. You've admitted in your presentation that the data is pretty good, but it could use a little bit of cleanup on y'all's end. It needs a little human touch. So I guess my ultimate concern is, if that check never happens, if we just spit whatever our prompt is into the program and just take it off face value, we just assume it's perfect and we use it from there. But if that's not the case and there are some minor flaws within the data it comes and spits back to us, if we are continuously building data off of this slightly flawed input or output, I should say, from these programs, and it's never checked, don't you think that kind of builds a house of cards where eventually our entire knowledge within these programs is based off of false information or false assumptions? Is that a concern?
Yeah, I think 100%. I know that my presentation is very positive, but yeah, there's a lot of concerns in these models because, like, just take writing ability. Like if you get a whole generation that's never written a thing from scratch, that's a concern, right? You think in the technical space in engineering, if it's just like a trust that the AI is always going to give, that's very concerning when particularly you start talking about bridges and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's a real concern. Now, there is pathways to secure against that, and so one is, I didn't get into it because, but there's a term out there called RAG. It stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation, and what that would be is you effectively train a data set that is your control, that's not the AI, and that data set, it's kind of like the MCP, but imagine like you actually control what is going into the RAG, and then the AI would interact. And the way that a RAG is set up is the AI is the first priority data over it. So that's one. For example, I told you about Harvey is the legal one. That's what they've done. That company that created Harvey, they created a RAG that is very specific case law that they control, but they do use ChatGPT as the LLM. So that is one pathway. The second is the open source one. So we didn't really get into it, but like one of the things you can do with an open source model is fine tune it. So you could get the llama model and you could say, hey, I want to, the way the model works is it has this data set and then they're establishing a weighting to establish like priority or probability of the answer. So if you had a niche that you had a concern about, whether it be, engineering or maybe a medical deal, you could fine tune the model yourself that you own. So I think the concern you bring up is a real concern, but I do think there's pathways to mitigate that.
I don't want to, I'm not anti-AI, it's just, I do think it could use some refinement before we just claim it as a savior.
Well, and we're concerned, with young engineers, because, in the engineering space, it takes 10 years, 5 years to like really understand a lot of concepts. And like, if, they're able to ask AI and they get an answer, but they don't really understand, like, what is it going to look like for the development of our people that are coming right out of school? It's almost easier for us that lived in the old world. And so, yeah. Other questions? Yes, sir.
Is there any risk in getting those programs on the government laptop?
So I think the risk is y'all's truly non-public data, right? And so that's what we were talking about. Like, if y'all are going, selecting one of these platforms, you definitely want to go like an enterprise where you have an agreement that all the data is, secured to Grand Prairie and will not be shared. But yeah, in terms of like educating your, employees of the city, there's definitely a concern if they jump on a free version and just start uploading stuff that is not public. And that's, a thing we're dealing with at Freese, making sure, same thing, we have that. So yeah, I think that's a very key concern because, you're sending that data to a server and it, you don't have control over it at that point. So that's a thing, has been a hot topic inside our firm, but I imagine will definitely be one that y'all will have to navigate as well. Yes, sir.
Whether you're using online-based AI or you've downloaded it as an application to your computer or server, can it pull information from your computer or server when demanded?
So there is AIs that will do that. You would have to give it access. So I showed you the one that was the browser. So if you elect you are giving it access to use your browser. One of the things I would suggest, I showed an example there, but you would definitely not want to give it passcodes, to browse through your bank account or whatever. But yeah, there are, folks that have set up AIs to like go through email and that kind of thing. I think that's something we're not doing at Freese because that, there's a lot of private data there, but that's something you definitely want to have an education around to, not give it that kind of access. And yeah, because that is a real concern, not only with the data, but like doing stuff you don't want it to do. Yes, sir. There are a variety of places. I think most are originally in California. I know Anthropic is. I'm not sure if OpenAI originates there, but and then I guess Microsoft's like Seattle. So it's all kind of the like Facebook or Meta is, and then you got Google. I think most of them are California. There is and I know there's a lot of different political opinions around it, but the DeepSeek is a Chinese model. There's a lot of speculation that may not be, whether there's any kind of taking of your data there. That's an open source one too. So, that's one. What I would say, if you have an interest in using one of these models that is more from another country, there are interfaces where you can use them through a different interface, not necessarily loaded on your computer. It's not to say, I don't, not making a comment on the politics of it because I think they are considered very good models. Like there's a French one that's quite popular. But yeah, it is very, in the model space, as you saw with the PACE, it's a little wild west. Like there's a lot. In fact, I actually have a whole different laptop I do it on, separate from my work, just to kind of keep that separation, for like anything I'm kind of testing. Yeah. No, it's a, There definitely is, that definitely has to be part of the conversation is, understanding those risks. Other questions? Well, we appreciate. I'll send to David and Jordan some of these prompts if you guys want to test them out. I think the funding one could have immediate benefit for y'all, and then if y'all have any questions, we're happy to share anything you need.